Imagine you could bring someone here, not from another country, not from another century, from 50,000 years ago, a fully modern human being, same brain, same intelligence, same capacity for emotion, curiosity, and love. You bring them to your city, your street, your home, and you show them your life. What would they see? Not what we assume they would see. A primitive person overwhelmed by technology. What would they actually see? Because the more scientists study the gap between ancient life and modern life, the more they find that the ancient human wouldn't just be confused by what we've built. They would be deeply, profoundly concerned about how we're living in it. Let's start with the first thing they would notice. Before the phone, before the car, before the buildings, the first thing they would notice is that you are alone. For 50,000 years, humans never slept alone. Not once. The idea of one person in one room, with a closed door, would be completely alien to every human who ever lived before, about 200 years ago. Ancient humans slept in groups, around fire, bodies close together, children beside parents, elders beside the young. The warmth was practical, but the closeness was something else. Anthropologist David Sampson from the University of Toronto has studied sleep across human cultures. He found that in hunter-gatherer societies, people didn't just sleep near each other. They timed their sleep to overlap, creating a kind of natural, around-the-clock awareness within the group. Someone was always in a lighter sleep phase, while others were deeper. A natural alarm system, built from bodies. And now, one person, one room, one door. The ancient human would not see this as privacy. They would see it as punishment. In ancient communities, being separated from the group at night was one of the most feared things that could happen to a person. It meant danger. It meant exclusion. It meant you had done something so wrong that your people had decided you were better off alone. We built houses around it and called it progress. Then they would follow you to the kitchen. And here is where it gets genuinely difficult to explain. The average ancient human consumed somewhere between 4 and 8 pounds of sugar in an entire year, all of it from fruit, honey, and occasionally wild plants. The average person today consumes 152 pounds of sugar per year, not because we want to, because it is in everything. The ancient human's brain was wired to crave sugar with the same intensity that ours does today. The difference is, they could never find enough of it. For 50,000 years, that craving was a survival instinct. Find the sweetest fruit. Eat as much as you can, because next week there might be none. That instinct is still running in your brain right now, unchanged. But instead of a rare patch of wild berries, it now has access to an entire aisle of a supermarket at 3 in the morning. Scientists at Loughborough University published a paper in Biological Reviews in 2025 calling this an environmental mismatch. The body evolved in one environment. It now lives in a completely different one. And the results of that collision are visible in the health statistics of every industrialized nation on Earth. The ancient human would not understand why you would build a world that works against the body that has to live in it. Then you show them your phone. And here, the ancient human would need to sit down, not because of the technology, because of what you're doing with it. You're looking at strangers, hundreds of them, every day, people you have never met, will never meet, whose lives have been carefully arranged to look better than yours, and your brain is comparing itself to every single one of them. Here is what researchers from Singapore University of Technology and Design found in a study published in Behavioral Sciences just weeks ago in July 2025. The human brain evolved to track status in a group of roughly 150 people. People you knew personally, people you had eaten with, slept near, fought beside, raised children alongside. Your brain knew exactly where you stood in that group. And that knowledge, however painful, was manageable. It was real. Now that same brain is trying to track status against billions of strangers whose highlight reels are running on a screen in your hand every waking hour. The researchers called it an overstimulation of ancestral status tracking instincts. The ancient human would have a simpler word for it: madness. Not cruelty, not stupidity, just madness. The idea that you would voluntarily spend hours every day looking at people who make you feel worse about your own life is something that would require a very long explanation to a person from 50,000 years ago. And at the end of that explanation, They still might not understand it. Now take them to your office. Show them what you do for 8 to 10 hours a day. They would see you sitting, almost completely still, staring at a glowing rectangle, surrounded by other people, doing exactly the same thing, in silence. A 2017 study of the Hadza people of Tanzania, whose lifestyle most closely mirrors our ancient ancestors, found they engage in over 945 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every single week. The average American adult manages 64 minutes per week, not per day, per week. The ancient human's body was built to move, to walk 8 to 14 kilometers daily, to lift, carry, climb, dig, run. And the evidence of what happens when that body stops moving is written across modern medicine's entire catalog of lifestyle diseases. Type 2, diabetes, heart disease, chronic back pain, anxiety, depression. A 2025 paper in Biological Reviews found that many of these conditions are not diseases in the traditional sense. They are signals, the body sending the same message over and over again in different languages. This is not what I was built for. The ancient human would not be impressed by the office. They would be confused by what you are doing to yourself inside it. But here is the part that would affect them most deeply. More than the sugar, more than the phone, more than the sitting. Take them to a city, 8 million people, and show them that most of those people will go home tonight and feel completely alone. The World Health Organization reported that 1 in 6 people globally now experience chronic loneliness. Clinical depression is exceptionally rare among traditional hunter-gatherer groups. Only 1 in 2,000 individuals among Papua New Guinea's Kaluli population met diagnostic criteria, compared to over 5% in industrialized nations. Let that number sit for a moment. 1 in 2,000 versus 1 in 20. The ancient human did not have a word for loneliness the way we use it. Not because they had better words, because the experience barely existed. You were born into a group. You lived in a group. You slept, ate, worked, celebrated, and grieved in a group. The group was not a choice. It was the condition of being human. Researchers at Singapore University noted that the human brain still craves immediate social feedback, direct face-to-face interaction, physical proximity, shared meals, eye contact, all the things that release oxytocin, the hormone of trust and bonding, in ways that no digital interaction has ever been able to replicate. We built the most connected world in human history, and somehow ended up with an epidemic of people who feel completely unseen. The ancient human would not marvel at our cities. They would mourn them. And then, after all of this, after the bedroom alone and the sugar and the phone and the office and the loneliness, you take them outside, at night, and you show them the sky. And this is where everything changes. Because for 50,000 years, every human who ever lived looked up at night and saw the Milky Way. Every night, without trying, without driving to a national park, without a special app, without checking the weather forecast, it was just there. 100 billion stars spread across the darkness like a river of light. Scientists now estimate that over 80% of people on Earth can no longer see the Milky Way from where they live. Light pollution has erased the most constant companion the human species ever had. And the ancient human, standing on your street, looking up at an orange sky full of nothing, would feel a loss that has no name in any language. So here is what the ancient human would actually think of your life. Not what we imagined they would think, that we have conquered nature, that we have won, that we have solved the problems they spent every day struggling against. They would see something different. They would see a species that built more than any species in the history of this planet, and then used what it built to be more isolated, more anxious, more sedentary, and more alone than at any other point in 300,000 years of human existence. They would see people with access to more food than any human has ever had, getting sick from it. People surrounded by more humans than any person ever lived near, dying of loneliness. People with more information than any mind could hold, more confused about how to live than any of their ancestors ever were. A brand new 2025 scientific review published in Behavioral Sciences put it this way: stress, loneliness, and anxiety are often treated as personal problems, but they may also reflect a mismatch between the environments people live in and the conditions our minds and bodies evolved to navigate. The ancient human didn't need a scientific paper to tell them that. They would have seen it in the first 5 minutes. And then they would have done what any human from any era would do in the presence of something they didn't fully understand. They would have sat down with you. They would have looked you in the eye. And they would have asked, in a language you couldn't understand, but somehow would have felt completely, "Are you okay?" Because that is what humans do. That is what they have always done. That is the one thing 50,000 years could not change and could not break and could not replace with anything better. We just forgot to keep doing it.